Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to learn how to get user input in JavaScript, an essential skill for any aspiring web developer. In this tutorial, we'll demonstrate two methods of accepting user input, the simple way using an alert box and the more advanced method using a text field and a button. So let's dive right in. First, we'll explore the easiest method of getting user input, the window.prompt method. With the prompt function, we can display an alert box where users can enter their information. This information will then be stored in a variable, which can be used later in your program. The prompt method has a straightforward syntax. It takes two arguments. Message is the prompt displayed to the user, and default is the optional pre-filled value. The prompt method returns the user's input as a string or null if the user clicks cancel or closes the prompt. Here is an example of how to use the prompt method to get user input in JavaScript. This code will display a dialog box with the message enter your name, and the value entered by the user will be stored in the input variable. The console.log method is then used to print the value of the input variable to the console. If the user clicks the cancel button in the dialog box, the prompt method will return null. You can use an if statement to check for this value and handle it accordingly. For example, in this example, the if statement checks for the value null and prints a message to the console if it is found. Otherwise, it prints the value of the input variable to the console. Note that the prompt method only allows the user to enter a single line of text. If you want to get more complex input from the user, such as multiple lines of text or multiple values separated by commas, you will need to use a different method, such as the window.open method. Now, let's move on to a more advanced method of gathering user input by creating an HTML form with a text field and a button. This approach gives you more control over the appearance and behavior of the input elements. Here, we've created an input field with the label name and an associated ID attribute, which we'll use to access the element in JavaScript. The button element has an onClick attribute, which tells the browser to execute the submit form function when the button is clicked. In the JavaScript code, we've defined the submit form function, which is called when the user clicks the submit button. Inside the function, we access the input element using document.getElementYID and obtain the user's input by accessing the value property of the input element. We then display the input on the screen by targeting a div element with the ID of result and updating its inner HTML property. Finally, we clear the input field by setting its value property to an empty string, allowing the user to enter new information without manually deleting the previous input. By using this approach, you can create customized forms and easily access user input for further processing in your JavaScript application. This method is particularly helpful when you need to collect more complex data or create a more visually appealing interface. If you're finding this tutorial helpful, don't forget to click the subscribe button below and turn on notifications to stay updated with our latest content. We're dedicated to helping you become a better web developer. To recap, in this tutorial, we've covered two ways to accept user input in JavaScript. 1. Using the prompt method to display an alert box and store the input in a variable. 2. Creating an HTML form with a text field and a button and accessing the input through the DOM. Getting user input is a fundamental skill in web development, and understanding these techniques will help you create more dynamic and interactive applications. That's all for today's tutorial. We hope you found it useful, and we can't wait to see what you build using these methods. Feel free to leave any questions or comments below, and as always, happy coding!